Hey boys and girls, it's Mrs. Daly coming on for math today. Today we're going to do some fraction review of how to read a fraction, and then I will introduce adding and subtracting fractions, and there'll be another separate lesson on adding and subtracting fractions for the next day. So whenever you watch this, just make sure that you watch the lesson on reviewing how to find a fraction first and then adding and subtracting second. So let me dive right in. I'm going to pull up the unique program because it has a great anchor chart in here. So I didn't make one for math today because this one in the unique program is super helpful. So first we're going to talk about our vocabulary for fractions. We'll talk about how to find a fraction, and then we'll do some practice in finding fractions, okay? So a fraction is just a part of a whole. So we always talk about fractions as a pizza. If you have one whole pizza, that's the whole thing. And then if you cut a piece off, that's a fraction or a part of the pizza. So when we write a fraction, you can see here where my white arrow is, that we put how many parts or how many pieces we have on the top part of our fraction. That's called the numerator. And then we put the whole pizza, so how many pieces are in the whole pizza, on the bottom. And that's our denominator. And the way I like to remember this is denominator starts with D, and the word down also starts with D. So the denominator goes down on the bottom, okay? So for example, we have our square here. I'm going to zoom it in a little bit more. So we have our square, and it says this whole square, so the whole square equals 4 parts. So if I were to count, and I'm going to get out my little drawing tool so you can see me count. Because when I count for fractions, I like to put dots in there so that I don't forget any of them. So when I count, I like to put a dot or a line. So how many pieces are in this? 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's 4 pieces all together in this one whole. So the whole is the denominator, the number that's down on the bottom, okay? So when I look at the square over here, there's one that is shaded. So there's one red piece that I'm going to take and eat. Let's pretend it's a cake. I'm going to take this piece and eat it. So I put my one piece that I'm going to take, or that is colored in or shaded, on top. So I put my number that's shaded on top. And then how many pieces are in the whole cake all together? 1, 2, 3, 4. So here's my 4 on the bottom for how many are all together in the whole pizza, okay? Or the whole cake. So let's look at another one. Okay, so here's another example. This one is a circle. So remember, if I want to know how many pieces I have all together, I need to count all the pieces that are there. So I have 1, 2, and 3. Okay, 1, 2, and 3. So now I need to know what fraction, which part of this is shaded. So first I'm going to count my ones that are colored or shaded. So I have 1, 2. So you can see here's my number 2 for how many are colored in or shaded red. And then I need to know how many are all together, how many pieces are in the pizza. So I count again. 1, 2, 3. Okay, 3 all together. My big number, my whole pizza, how many pieces are in the whole thing, always goes down on the bottom, okay? All right, let's look at one more example. So this is another way. You might see it as some objects together, and they might be telling you a fraction or a part of those pieces are doing something. So maybe we might have cats and dogs, and we want to know what the fraction of dogs is. We would count how many dogs there are, and then we would count how many animals are all together, okay? So for this example, we have 3 circles, 3 dots to make our whole, 1, 2, and 3. But over here, we have 1 that is colored in red, and then 3 all together. So 1/3 of these are colored red, okay? So that's how we find our fractions. Let's do some practice now. looking at some money jars and seeing if we can find the fraction that tells us what number this is, okay? So first we'll read our question and then we'll go through it together. Alec earns money watering the plants. He puts his money in the money jar. What fraction does Alec's money jar show? So we're looking for a fraction, so I know I don't need to count all this money up because that would take me forever, right? I just want to know what fraction of my jar is full. So I'm going to use my little counter, my little drawer tool to count these out, and I'm going to put a mark in it every time I count a part so that I know that I counted it, okay? So I have how many that have pieces in them? How many have money in it? 1, 2, and 3. So I know I need a 3 on top. And then I need to know how many pieces are all together, okay? So if I move this back over, I can see I counted my 3, but I need to know how many are all together. So if I count all together, I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? The whole jar is 4 parts, okay? So I had a 3 for how much money there were, and a 4 for how many pieces were all together, okay? So here's what my fraction is going to look like, 3/4. So I'm gonna pull this up so you can see your choices. Oh. With your finger, I want you, once Miss Daly gets the screen situated, to touch the answer that matches the one that we counted together. Do you see the answer that matches? Great job. I see lots of friends touching this last one here, 3/4, because we said when we counted there were 3 spots that had coins and there were 4 pieces in my entire jar. Beautiful job. All right, let me clear my drawings and we'll try the one that was on top. Okay. So Emily earns money taking out the trash. She puts her money in the money jar. What fraction does Emily's money jar show now? So last time we counted how many pieces we had first. Excuse me. The other way you could do it is you could count how many are in your whole first and then count how many pieces there are. So let's try that first. If I was going to write this fraction, I need to know how many pieces are all together in my jar. So I'm going to start at the top and go down, and I want to hear you counting with me. Ready? 1, 2, 3, and 4. Beautiful. Now that's how many pieces are all together. So does that number go in the numerator on top or in the denominator down on the bottom? Beautiful. I hear lots of friends saying down. Great job. Okay, so I know that there are 4 all together. So I'm going to erase these so we can count again. And for the top, I just want to know how many pieces there are. So I only need to count the spots that have money in them. So how many spots have money? Yeah, just that one, right? And I already have a number on the bottom, so I'm going to put my 1 up here on the top. So I read this number as 1/4. Very good. All right, let me switch to my mouse. And with your finger, I want you to find the number that matches the one that we found. So we have 1/4. Do you see one in the blue box that matches that answer? Great job, friends. I see lots of you pointing to this number in the middle because it has a 1 on the top and a 4 on the bottom. Beautiful job. Okay, let me clear my answers and we will move on to some more practice. You guys are doing a great job. Okay, so this one might be a little tricky and we're going to talk about it together after we count and add it up, okay? So Chris earns money cleaning his room. He puts his money in the money jar. What fraction does Chris's money jar show? Okay, I'm going to get my marker out and I'm going to draw my fraction line to start with. Oops. And then I want to count how many pieces I have all together first. So how many are in my whole? How many pieces are all together? 1, 2 and 3. Okay. And my whole number, does that go in the numerator on top or in the denominator on the bottom? Very good. It goes in the denominator, so I'm going to put my 3 here. Okay. So now let me erase these lines that I made for counting, because now we need to count how many pieces we have. So how many pieces have coins in them? Okay, you ready? 1, 2, and 3. Oh my goodness. There's 3 pieces, and 3 pieces make up one whole. So there are 2 ways that you could see this written. You could see it written like this with 3 on top of the 3, so 3/3. But this is also equal to, 3/3 is equal to 1 whole. So these are 2 different ways you could see that written, 3/3 or 1 whole, okay? So let's see if we can find one of those answers. With your finger, I want you to look and see if you see 3/3 or 1 whole. Great job. I saw we got a little confused, right? Because I have a 1/3 right here, and I know this is 1 whole, but I have to remember that if I get to a whole, that's not a fraction anymore. It's just the number 1. So I need this number here, 3/3, to equal my whole jar being full. Great job. Okay. Let's try another one. So this one's a little tricky too. I'm just trying to trick you. Make sure you're using your brain to think it out, okay? Emily wants to buy a new hat. She needs to get money from her money jar. What fraction does Emily's money jar show? Okay, so let's draw our line, because I know we're working with fractions, so I'm going to need a line. And I'm going to do by denominator. So how many pieces do I need for the whole jar? Are you ready? 1, 2, 3, and 4. Good job. I heard lots of good counting at home. Beautiful job. 4. Okay. Now I'm going to erase these because I need to count which ones have coins. But when I look at it, do any of these have coins? They don't, right? What number do we use when we don't have any? Beautiful job. Yeah, we use a 0. So this fraction looks like this. We have 0 pieces, and there are 4 parts in the whole jar. So we say 0/4. This would be like if we started with a pizza and 4 pieces, and we all shared it and there was nothing left. Then it would be 0 pieces of pizza left, right? Great job. So can you find that fraction that matches? 0/4 with your finger. Can you touch the answer for me? Great job, guys. 0/4. All right, let me clear our work and go to the next one. Okay. Alec wants to buy a new baseball. He needs to get money from his money jar. What fraction does Alec's money jar show? So I want you at home to try this on your own before we do it together. Okay, so I want you to first find the denominator. So how many pieces are in the whole jar? So take a second with your finger and do that. Count out the pieces, and then we'll check it together. All right, I heard lots of great counting. So let's check our answer and make sure we're right. I want to know how many pieces are all together. So I'm going to count 1, 2, and 3. Thumbs up if you got 3. Great job. And that goes on the numerator or on the denominator? Great job. That's my whole, so it goes down on the denominator. Very good. Okay. So now I want you to take a minute and count how many pieces do we have for the numerator? How many pieces have coins in them? Let me hear you count at home. I love listening to you guys count. Beautiful job. Okay, let's count together. Ready? 1 and 2. 2/3. All right, here's your last job. You ready? Can you find 2/3 as an answer and touch it with your finger? You guys are so amazing and so smart. I just love it. All right, so that's our review of finding a fraction, but before we say goodbye today, I want to talk about adding fractions together, because the next lesson you'll be able to watch will be how to add the fractions together. So I want to kind of review that and maybe do one practice together. So let's see. Adding fractions is super easy. You are going to have the same whole the whole time you're adding. So if you look at all these numbers, you'll see what's on the bottom. There's a 4 here, there's a 4 here, and there's a 4 here, right? So my bottom number, am I adding it at all? No, right? My pizza doesn't get any bigger. I'm just adding more pieces into it. So my big pizza can only take so many pieces to stay a pizza, right? So if I look, I have one shaded piece here, right? Okay. And this one I have 2, right? 1 and 2. So I know I'm still going to have 4 for my bottom number because I'm just going to bring this over. Sometimes Miss Daly draws an arrow to remind herself to just bring that number over. But now I'm going to push all my parts together to see how many pieces that I have, because we'll pretend like this pizza is Miss Daly's and I have 1 piece. And this is how many pieces you have. You have 2. But I want to know how many pieces we have all together. Remember, all together is our word we used before for adding. So I want to know how many pieces of pizza that we have all together. So I'm just going to count my piece and your pieces together to figure out how many. So let's count. Ready? 1, 2, and 3. And so you can see right here, this number 3 is how many pieces we have all together. So they just smushed our pieces into one spot to look at how many there were. Okay? That's easy peasy, right? Let's look at another one together. This is the same thing. So on the bottom in our denominator, we have 3 pieces in our whole, right? So my 3 is just going to keep going all the way over because we don't change the denominator. We're just adding it together, okay? That's kind of hard. Okay, so our 3 stays on the denominator. But now I want to know how many pieces we have all together, because Miss Daly has 1 piece here, where my little green dot is, and you have 1 piece here. Okay, so now how many pieces do we have all together? Remember, that's our word that means we need to add them together, okay? So now I can just count my dots and move them over. 1, 2, and look at that, there's a 2 right there. Easy peasy, right? Do you want to try one together? Okay, let's try one together, and then we'll say goodbye for the day. So, all right, so let me read out our words at the top, and then we will practice finding our answer and we'll add them together, okay? Here we go. Alec earns money doing chores. He puts the money he earns in his money jar. He fills 2/4 of the jar with money for taking out the trash. He fills 1/4 of the jar with money for making his bed. What fraction of the money jar does he fill all together? All right, we have a couple steps, right? First, we need to figure out what our fraction is for each jar. Then we'll practice adding them together, okay? So let's look at our first jar. How many pieces are all together in my jar? How many do I need for the whole jar? Ready? 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so I know I need a 4 on the bottom. And then how many pieces have money in them? So with your finger, I want you to go ahead and count how many pieces have money in them for this first jar. Beautiful job. Show me with your fingers. How many did you count to? 1 and 2. Great job. So I'm going to put a 2 in the numerator on top, right? Okay. So let's see if you can find that answer. Do you see, whoops, sorry. do you see 2/4 in the blue box? Can you touch it with your finger? Great job. I have a 2 in the numerator and a 4 in the denominator. Beautiful. Okay, so let's try another one. Well, not another one, the one next to it, because we need to figure out how many to add. So I know that when I'm adding, all my denominators are going to be the same, right? So do I need to count, or can I just put a 4 in my denominator? Yeah, I could count if I wanted to, but it's always going to be the same number in the denominator. So I'm going to go ahead and put a 4 down. And then how many pieces up here have money? So I want you to touch them and count them with your fingers and show me with your fingers how many pieces have money. Yeah, great job. There's just one here, right? One piece. So I'm going to put a 1 in my numerator. So this number is 1/4. So with your finger, I want you to find 1/4. Great job. Yeah, a 1 and then a 4. Beautiful job. Okay. You guys are getting it. So now let's talk about our answer, right? We need to talk about our answer. So Miss Daly told you when we went over our anchor chart for adding that my number in the denominator just comes right over, right? So what number is going to go on the bottom? Beautiful, a 4. I'm going to keep my 4 in the denominator, okay? But now I need to know how many pieces he has all together. All together is one of my words that means what? What am I doing when I see all together? I'm adding, right? And I practiced with my hundreds chart adding by counting on. So I can count how many are here and then keep counting to add more. So let's do that together. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Beautiful job. 3/4. That's how many he has now. 3/4. All right, can you find that number? 3/4 with your finger? Beautiful job. Beautiful job. So we have one more job. We need to find the jar that matches that. So can you find the jar? And I'll write the fraction because you can't see it now. Can you find the jar that has 3 parts and 4 parts that make up the whole? 3/4. Which one has 3 colored in? Can you touch it with your finger? Yeah, good job. Let's count and make sure. 1, 2, and 3. Beautiful job. You guys are so smart. I think you're really getting it. All right, I had a wonderful time with you doing fractions for this lesson. Remember, I'm going to do another lesson that you can watch after this one about doing more adding with fractions and then maybe introducing some subtracting fractions. So look for that as another lesson to do. See you guys next time. Bye.